Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome once again to another live stream. This one, I have to say, is called Property Matters with Hamish McLay of Search and Convey. Today's special guest, you may recognize him from previous shows on other channels. Shameless plug, Property Quorum, Thursdays at 10 o'clock. Rowan Waller, often known as the Propertywaller, which is lovely to have you here, sir.
That's my great pleasure once again. So thank you very much for the invite.
Oh, not at all. We like surrounding ourselves with people who know far better than us, and you being one of them, and Hamish being the other. Now, today's topic is as follows. When truth emerges, are any real gains to be had in housing? So the first question, I'm going to pass that straight over to Hamish. Hamish.
Well, I think one of the aspects, I did write an article on promoting.
I know, I was reading it earlier, actually. Yeah.
Entitled Manifestos Are Not Promises.
Yeah, well, I think we know that. We're all bloody cynics now.
However, there are certain threats. I ought to mention this one. My business was very, very much based on home information packs.
Right.
Way back in 2010.
Can anybody remember those things?
Sorry?
Can anybody remember?
I was about the only estate agent in the country that thought they were a good idea, but I thought they were great.
Well, it's at that particular sort of time, we were doing about 400 a week. Sorry, 400 a month. Which was because we didn't have the technology. So it was hard work involved pulling them all together. But our business was based entirely on that. And what it was, and as Rowan sort of quite rightly points out, that gave you much more information that was available then for the potential buyer. Because it was up the front end. Now, what happened, of course, because it was those were at the front end, as soon as Grant Shapps, who was going to give 100 days consultation, gave 24 hours notice, we lost. Because we put that out, we lost 6 months worth of business. And when you're doing 400 of these, 400 of these a month, that's 20 plus 200, that's a lot of money. So we didn't have any income for 6 months.
Well, you lost all that business. He's lost his seat. I think it seems even.
Yes. So, I mean, he didn't do what he was saying. I'm a little bit concerned that we might have people jumping into an arena that they're not as familiar with as they ought to be.
Right.
They got there by virtue of, they're not promises, they're manifestos. They've got there sometimes because of their manifestos, and one wonders, are they going to dump in without finding out what's actually going on before they act? And
you see, I thought a manifesto was a list of things one would do whilst one is in power. And these days, and I would say this over the last 14 years, manifestos are turned into wishful thinking dreams that one might have when puffing on wacky-backy.
Well, I think that, so what a manifesto pledge is something that they intend to do, but might not get round to in this parliament. And I think that's, so as long as they don't do something that flies in the face of what they promised. So, for example, what do you mean,
like a complete U-turn? A complete U-turn, such as complete opposite of what they promised?
Yeah. So you look at the Lib Dems in 2010.
Yeah, it's a good example.
Had in the manifesto, made pledges about tuition fees, and then because they were in coalition, reneged on that promise, which was a manifesto promise. They were then smashed to pieces in 2015 or whenever.
Well, they had no legs.
They went against the promise.
Absolutely.
Now, and that's a bit different. So what we might find is Labour's got quite a lot of pledges that are going to cause a little bit of worry in the housing market in certain sectors.
Yeah.
Especially with these suggestions around capital gains tax. Now, what might happen is that it just gets kicked down the road further and further, and we get to another election in 5 years' time, and it still hasn't happened, and then they're still pledging it, but it hasn't yet happened. So we never know exactly when these things are going to be brought in, and which sitting of Parliament it might get debated.
So, do you not think that this changeover could potentially herald some great benefits to potential homeowners?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like a lot of homeowners, they see the sort of the kind of the immediate fiscal benefit in what value their house is going to have, and the signs seem to be saying that we're now going to have some accelerated house price growth over
Right.
the back end of this
That's
year.
what everyone.
And
That's
into
all the smart
2025.
money's on that, isn't it?
And that's what people care about. But it's not really got much to do with the change of government. It will have a bit to do with consumer confidence, which might come from a change of government. And everything's changed. It's all going to get better. Because actually, I might be able to see a doctor quickly, and actually, I might be able to get on a bus for cheaper, and actually, I might have a pension pot. So people generally become a little bit happier when they start moving house. So there's a bit of that, but mostly it's going to be interest rates are likely to drop. Whether they drop, whenever it is, 1st, 2nd, 3rd of August, or whether it happens in back end of September, or whether it happens even later in the year. The mortgage companies are already cutting their product rates this week in some sort of anticipation of falling rates. So it's that kind of thing. It's the drop in inflation. It's the Bank of England surveying businesses and businesses saying, well, actually, we're not going to be putting our prices up this year, and we're not going to be increasing wages this year, which means that inflation is likely to be fairly stable. It's all of those things that are really going to play into the growth in house prices over the next 6 months, 12 months. Nothing really to do with the change of government or their policies. So policies actually that might come in and kind of kibosh it as we go through the sort of the 9-month period.
Right. Hamish, what do you think is the next stage that we should be doing, or should we just sit back on our heels and just wait for it all to happen?
I think there's a great danger in that. And speaking with our colleague Chris, or even listening to Chris, he produced an excellent podcast yesterday, I believe, when you were actually speaking to him, which was saying, hey, actually, when you look at these percentage rates of what it's costing for your mortgage, although people say, wow, it's gone down by, it's really, in the grand order of things, it's pretty negligible. It's not going to impact much. If it's going to be a difference of £500, that's a big difference. Difference of £500 a month. Wow, surely, yes. That's going to make an impact. But £50 a month? I mean, if you're pretty well broke already, 50 quid's not going to make much difference. You want to, so really that particular sort of aspect of things doesn't matter. But one of the things, and Chris is so very, very good at this, and probably Rowan much appreciates this as well. Any time can be right, providing you're looking at the right thing. You need to be aware of what's going on. One of the great things about linking up with Rowan, as we were speaking earlier, is the fact that he has knowledge about the housing market, so he will know when anybody who wants to buy or sell, now is the right time to start doing something, because it doesn't happen overnight, whatever you choose to do. If the mortgage rate comes down and you're going to benefit from it, we know the money lenders who will track that for you, and they will actually give you ideas and enable you to actually sort of do it. But sitting around and waiting is a particularly good idea. And the thing is, what we have learned, there's so much going on within the wondrous sort of world of conveyancing, which is such an important aspect of what goes on in the property world. It does need tidying out. It does need resolving. But we have learned that you need to discuss these things. And it's a matter, we've got an opportunity now to discuss this and get the right people together to discuss it, to get the right solutions, which actually will help and enable both the sale of property and the conveyancing process as well. We've got systems that are not running together. We've got people bellyaching about each other from opposite sides because they're not transparent enough to be able to sort of work together. And so this I think is but none of them, we don't have anything within the manifesto suggesting people are going to be looking at bringing people together to discuss it. That worries me.
So is this the old hippie in you, Hamish, saying, can't we all just get along, man?
Well, that as well. Wow. Yeah. Golly gosh, of course. One must do these things and go play in the woods and yeah. I mean, it's amazing what you can grow in some woodland as well. We won't speak about that anymore. My brother's seen that was, but it's not so much. Well, yes, we do like to get on with each other, because one of the great things is by discussing each of our needs and actually have an argument, have a jolly good argument, because on first looking, you don't know necessarily because you aren't wearing those moccasins. You want to sell a property. I mean, my moccasins, I haven't worn any that enable me to sell properties or even buy properties for that matter.
Right.
I support what goes on.
So communication is absolutely key. Rowan, it always gets me that in successive governments, albeit the last few of them of a bluish shade, they've always promised to do all this wonderful house building. And yet I think the best they've managed to achieve in the last 14 years is barely 50% of a yearly target. Do you think that's heavy on the Labour manifesto, or is that still going to be?
Well, it's been so they promised 1.5 million over the next 5 years, which is 300,000 a year, effectively, which is exactly what's been promised by the last two governments, I think.
Yeah, but they could barely. I think they achieved 150,000.
Yeah, absolutely. So that level hasn't been achieved since the 1960s when we had a national house building program. That's when we were demolishing the slums and replacing them with houses. We've got no imperative. And we poured concrete houses as well, which were only meant to live for 30 years. So there's
some of those still exist now.
They do, and they cause us problems. So that's what I mean. Careful what you wish for with it. I think what there's something slightly different with Labour's proposal on it, which is that they're proposing relaxation of planning laws, and they're talking about making it easier to build on brownfield sites and releasing some greenbelt. So actually building on greenbelt, which is a bit kind of anathema to a shade of blue, but when you your core base is in the urban areas and the cities, it doesn't matter so much. Now, it doesn't mean concreting over, areas of outstanding natural beauty. It means these edge of town, scrappy bits of green space.
Absolutely, the brownfield sites that nobody wants.
Yeah, exactly. So that if they make that a bit easier, it doesn't matter if people have got a nice view. What matters is it buildable land, and is it going to detract if we take it away from greenbelt? And if that becomes easier, then they are going to have a bit more access to land to build more. Labour's focus is on building affordable housing. So it's not about building for the private sector. It's about building for the maybe build to rent, maybe social housing. But there'll obviously be some benefit to commercial developers and personal homes and Bovis homes, everything else is going to be building to sell as well.
No. Hamish, I remember previously, and I was talking to Chris about this yesterday. Chris from Root Home. I heard, and we made some big story about it a while back, that there was a relaxation of planning restrictions anyway that would allow you to increase the through dormers and so on, the size of the house, and even potentially wrap around the edge and increase the volume that way. Now, that would play particularly well into his portfolio of building houses for HMOs. But I don't see a massive uptake of this in the marketplace. I thought they'd be going for it hell for leather, but it doesn't seem to have happened.
Well, it's twofold, really. First of all these ideas, particularly when they come through government, they're very largely not fully thought through. And this is where it gets interesting when you actually bring in the legal profession. When we get somebody who is experienced as Juliet, for example, Juliet Babil, who sort of joins us from, she's a partner of Gunnersmoke. Gunner Cook. I knew it was Gunner something.
I prefer Gunsmoke, actually. It sounds much cooler. Anyway, carry on.
But the whole sort of challenge is it's never been fully tested. It was rather like the building safety. Nobody's mentioned sorting the mess up from that. They want to get this rental reform, but they're not too sure what they need to reform because they forget there might be some gruesome. This is one of the things I was going to ask Rowan about, actually. There might be some gruesome landlords out there or letting agents. However, there are some pretty darn gruesome tenants living in some of these places. And there needs to be an element of protection, and we don't have law courts that can cope with it. There needs to be a drastic change, a better way of looking at it. Because something like sales is saying, oh, all these homeless people, it's not because you have unruly landlords. That isn't the challenge. It's the housing stock that's the challenge.
It is the absolute challenge.
See 300,000 in a year and 150,000 of them being social housing.
Right. So Rowan, this housing stock, which is depleting rapidly by the second, as I said, that's surely got to be an important part of a manifesto that they've got to keep.
Yeah, I mean, they can just get. I mean, they'll live with the criticism, won't they? They've got such a big majority; it's not going to matter for a few years. But I imagine they're going to try and push that. I do think there's going to be a house building agenda. I think they are going to be looking at planning reform. They are going to be looking at making it easier. But they, they're on day one, aren't they? When are we really going to expect major sort of spades in the ground?
Well,
with any huge building program, and that's why they've said. It's not 300,000 a year. It is 1.5 million over 5 years.
Yeah.
So they've got a year to get away with it before they're kind of criticised for not getting on with it. And actually, I think in a year they are going to make some changes. I think we're going to see some of this planning reform come in, and I think they're going to be pushing a housing minister. And it may. Do you know what? What I really hope for the housing market is that we get a housing minister that's still our housing minister in 5 years' time.
Yes.
I think
that would be nice. It'd be nice if the cabinet could hold their posts for more than a few minutes at a time. It would give us a chance to get used to them. Hamish, would you take us home, sir?
Well, I think what we have a lot to sort of sift through, and I think that there is a challenge. We have this expectation. Everybody's built everything's going to check. Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. We're still the same we were 24 hours ago. And Keir Starmer, I think you might have been to them. Is he out of Buckingham Palace yet? I caught a brief instance earlier where everybody's been in the pouring rain, apart from Sir Keir, because he happened to be in Buckingham Palace speaking to Charlie Boy. I guess, but it does take time. He's got to put his, and I think patience is important. But what I'm really looking forward to is the opportunity to just get the right people discussing the best ways to do it. We do need properties to be able to go out there that can be sold. We also need the social housing side. Whichever way it happens, but we need both because we've got a growing population. And whilst the population continues to grow and the housing stock doesn't, we're in big, we're pretty well sort of running backwards in that respect.
Well, I mean, one thing I've been noting is in all the G7s, I think bar one, we've got an aging population and an ever decreasing birth rate, which means over the next 10, 15 years, we're going to end up with much higher requirements and onus on the NHS. It's going to require a whole change of population and also, more importantly, caring and the type of properties. They're going to be. You're going to find a lot more single-story properties. You're going to find and all that sort of thing. You don't find many 90-year-olds wanting to run up and downstairs, and so I think there's going to be a lot of that. Is the government willing to listen to the clamour towards more social housing, less reliance on private landlords to step up to the plate? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. All it remains for me to say is to thank Hamish McLay, Search Convey, for having started Property Matters. Very pleased it's going ahead as well as it does. And of course, returning Rowan Waller, the Property Waller. If you've got questions and you want to make yourself move in this marketplace, you could do far worse than spending some time with Rowan and getting the skinny on it, because he keeps his ear to the ground. Does our dear Rowan. So until next time, I wish all of you reach for the stars, but keep your feet on the ground and have yourself a very pleasant weekend and look after that mental health. Bye-bye now.